Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This week we'll be discussing the 1980 horror, thriller, suspense classic, Dressed to Kill, starring Michael Caine. It's an all-star cast, what can I tell you? Angie Dickinson, Nancy Allen, the list goes on and on. For those of you joining us for the first time, each week in the B Movie Club, I discuss a certain guilty pleasure, forgotten classic. I post it on our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club. Don't forget to like us, and you can send in your favorite scenes, favorite quotes, anything you'd like to get off your chest, and we'll talk about it on the show. Don't forget to go also to our page on YouTube and subscribe. It's totally free. And if you want to reach me directly, you can tweet me at Twitter at KD9575. So here we are, Dressed to Kill. In this movie, Michael Caine plays a psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Elliott. He has a patient played by Angie Dickinson who's dealing with some kind of marriage issues. Her husband and her are just not on the same page, evidently. She has a son who's kind of a nerdy science guy. He's an inventor. He's very handy. He builds things. Okay, there you go. Circuits, the like, if you will. One day, after propositioning her psychiatrist, she goes off to a museum, and while she's there, she is picked up by an attractive stranger, and they go off, have a little tryst, a little rendezvous, if you will. On her way out, she's attacked by a strange blonde woman with a straight razor and murdered, viciously murdered in the elevator. So, the first person who discovers her is Linda, played by Nancy Allen. She's kind of a high-class call girl, if you will. She's brought down to the police station. They talk to her. They talk to the psychiatrist, trying to find out who may have wanted to murder poor Angie Dickinson. We can't figure out what the deal is. She wasn't suicidal. You know, she wasn't looking to die. She didn't have a death wish, per se. The detective, played by Dennis Franz, so there you go, you might remember as Sipowicz from NYPD Blue. He thinks it might be one of Dr. Elliott's patients. Dr. Elliott obviously has doctor-patient confidentiality. He doesn't want to give up all of his stuff. So there's an issue there. Meanwhile, the detective goes back to Linda, the prostitute, and says basically, how do I know you didn't do it? Obviously, she can't produce a witness because she was with one of her clients, if you will, Ted from out of town. So if she can't produce a corroborating witness, maybe he'll start turning the investigation back to her. So meanwhile, the strange blonde woman knows that she's basically been identified by this prostitute, so she's approaching her, following her on the street, things like that. Meanwhile, Dr. Elliott is getting kind of quasi-threatening phone calls, basically admitting, I'm the one who murdered the housewife, and I'm also looking at the witness, so look out. This is a former patient, evidently, of Dr. Elliott's named Bobby, who we discover was kind of a pre-op transsexual type, somebody who's born a man but is looking to become a woman, dealing with stuff, but there's like a murderous rage going on there. I don't want to spoil everything. I don't want to give everything away, okay? There's a lot of twists and turns, if you will. I highly recommend checking it out. What can I tell you about Dressed to Kill? Michael Caine, we're big fans of Michael Caine here. Looking back through like mid-70s through the 80s, he did a lot of not-so-great movies. He was obviously in this, which I enjoyed. He was also in The Hand, if you remember that one. He was in Jaws the Revenge. He was in Blame It on Rio. I mean, not exactly a, a list of the best pictures, you know what I'm saying? They originally had thought about Sean Connery playing the role of Dr. Elliot. He was enthusiastic about it, but some kind of scheduling thing occurred, so they went with his buddy Michael Caine. Who, here's the thing, his real name, Michael Caine's real name is not Michael Caine. That's a stage name. His real name is Maurice Micklewhite. Now you know why he changed it to Michael Caine. When he was first cast in one of his first big productions back in the 60s, his agent was like, look, we can't call you Maurice Micklewhite. Once you become a big star, Micklewhite doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. What do you suggest? And he's like, well, I've always liked the name Michael. He's like, okay, Michael what? He was talking to his agent on a phone, in a phone booth. And he looked around, and there was a theater across the street. The theater was showing the Caine Mutiny. So he took Caine, now he's Michael Caine. He has joked many times that if 101 Dalmatians had been playing across the street, he might have had a slightly different name. So there you go. He's a real knee slapper there. So they went with Michael Caine. Angie Dickinson was very famous this time. She was in a very successful TV show called Policewoman, where she played a policewoman. So she was cast here. This movie's kind of got kind of an erotic thriller kind of vibe to it very early on. There's a shower scene where Angie Dickinson is in there kind of washing herself off and thinking about her husband. Caused a bit of a stir because it wasn't her body. They used a body double of like the 1975, Penthouse pet, something like that. But the director, Brian De Palma, you might remember he did The Untouchables, he did Carrie, did a lot of things in the 80s and 70s and the 90s. He encouraged her to just pretend like that was her body, like in interviews, blah, blah, blah. Tell the world that was you. But it caused a bit of a stir, if you will. So there's that. She's in this. Like I said earlier, she's actually in not that much of it. She's probably in maybe 20 minutes of the movie, give or take, before it's curtains for her, if you will. Spoiler alert. In spite of the fact this is kind of a horror, thriller, suspense deal, there's really only one murder in the entire movie. So it's really not. I mean, there's the one attacking scene in the elevator, which is very freaky, kind of a psycho homage, if you will. It really isn't that violent a film. It's a lot more of like the evil killer kind of stalking her throughout the movie, the witness, if you will. So there's that. Nancy Allen, who was married to Brian De Palma at this time, plays Linda, the prostitute. She was in quite a few of his movies, including she was in Carrie. So later she was in RoboCop, so there you go. Even more recently, she was in Out of Sight back in the 90s, so she's been in a few things. Quentin Tarantino is a huge fan of this movie. He appreciated her performance so much that when he was writing True Romance, who has a Patricia Arquette playing a prostitute in one of the lead roles, he harkened back to Nancy Allen's performance in this movie. So there you go. Good times had by all. Another character's in this, playing the son. He was another actor whose name just jumped right out of my mind. He was in Christine. He was in Back to School as Rodney Dangerfield's annoying son. So there you go. He's been in quite a few things as well. So there you have that as well. This movie caused a bit of a stir because originally in the 70s, Brian De Palma was writing a script based upon a series of articles that eventually became a movie called Cruising with Al Pacino, that a totally different director came up with their own script and their own take on it. And it dealt with a police officer kind of delving into murders within the kind of underground gay culture. And this movie, they took some of the things from that original script and dealt with kind of, I guess, the dark side of transsexuality, if you will. It really isn't about that. Obviously, it's not about all transsexuals are murderers. It's about this one kind of bizarre case, if you will. But nonetheless, it caused a lot of brouhaha, if you will. People in the transsexual community didn't like the depiction of a transsexual, so take that with a grain of salt. There is a bit of a twist at the end of the movie. I'm not going to spoil it now. It is pretty cool. Although, looking back on it, I'm trying not to spoil it. But the actor who's supposedly the killer, or actress, if you will, is played most of the time by a different actor. So it's kind of a trick. You know what I mean? If you're looking close at the murderer, it's not played by the person who it's later revealed is the killer. Is that confusing enough for you? So there you have it. It currently holds an 84% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so you know it's good. Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars. Leonard Maltin gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars, so it got some good things. They both basically have the same kind of thing where the movie deals on a much more of an emotional plane, if you will, because it kind of builds up the suspense at the expense of some logic issues, I guess they felt. I'm not sure what they were referring to, but it worked. It works. Another interesting little sidebar here. The use of a body double earlier in the movie may or may not have contributed to a movie that Brian De Palma did a few years later called Body Double. So there you go. See, it all comes together. So, next week, we're going to be leaving the horror genre behind now that Halloween will basically be over by that point. We're going to go back to the action genre. This is a movie I've been dying to do for a long time, but it hasn't been streaming instantly on Netflix. So we're going to be doing the Patrick Swayze opus, the triumphant performance, if you will, Roadhouse, Patrick Swayze as Dalton, the cooler, if you will. He throws you out of the bar if you get a little unruly. Okay, so there's that. It is streaming instantly on Netflix. Just like Dressed to Kill is still streaming instantly. So check them both out. Send me your favorite scenes, favorite quotes, anything else you'd like to say, any questions or comments, and I'll talk about them on the show. Again, go to our page on YouTube, Original B Movie Club, and like us. Go to our page on, Go to our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club, like us. Go to our page on YouTube and subscribe. It's totally free, and you can tweet me at KD9575. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote, and here it is. Maybe my weirdo is your patient suffering from problems of maladaption. So there you have it. Thank you for joining us. Next week, Roadhouse. Be well.